She kissed her boss before she even knew his name. One reckless night, one stranger who felt like fate. One mistake that would detonate her entire world when Monday morning arrived and he walked into the boardroom, not as a colleague, but as the CEO who now controlled her career, her reputation, everything she'd fought to rebuild after betrayal nearly destroyed her. What started as an escape became a trap. What felt like freedom turned into the most dangerous game she'd ever played. This is their story. If you're watching from anywhere in the world, drop your city in the comments. I want to see how far this story travels. Hit that like button and let's dive in. The bass hit like a second heartbeat. Ava Carter stood at the edge of the VIP section, champagne flute dangling from fingers that had gone numb somewhere around her third drink. The club was all crystal and chrome, the kind of place where money didn't whisper. It screamed. Lasers cut through manufactured fog, turning beautiful people into fragments of color and shadow. She shouldn't be here. She should be home, spreadsheets open, rehearsing Monday's presentation until the words turned to muscle memory. 3 months unemployed had taught her that opportunities didn't fall into laps. They had to be seized, strangled, forced into submission. And this job, this impossible position at Vance Industries, was her last shot at clawing back everything she'd lost. But tonight, she'd made a different choice. You look like you're planning a murder or contemplating one. The voice came from her left, smooth, amused, with an edge that suggested its owner enjoyed walking close to danger. Ava didn't turn. Can't it be both? That's the spirit. He moved into her peripheral vision. Tall, dark suit that probably cost more than her rent, with the kind of presence that made people step aside without realizing they were doing it. Though if you're taking suggestions, the bartender's been watering down the top shelf vodka. Start there. She glanced at him then. Mistake. He was beautiful in a way that felt almost aggressive. Sharp jaw, dark hair that looked artfully disheveled, eyes that were probably brown but read almost black in the club's lighting. But it wasn't the aesthetics that caught her. It was the way he looked at her, like he could see past the expensive dress she'd charged to a credit card she couldn't afford, past the makeup that concealed 3 nights of bad sleep, straight down to the raw nerve of whoever she actually was. I'm not here to critique the alcohol, Ava said. No? He shifted closer, not invading her space, but suggesting he could. What are you here for? To forget. Heavy night? Heavy year. She drained the champagne, set the glass on a passing server's tray with more force than necessary. You ask a lot of questions for a stranger. Would you prefer I make assumptions? I'd prefer you tell me your name so I can decide if this conversation is worth having. His smile was quick, genuine, direct. I like that. He extended a hand. Luca. She studied the offered hand, long fingers, no wedding ring, calluses that suggested he did something besides push paper. When she took it, his grip was firm, warm, electric. Ava. Ava. He said it like he was testing the weight of it. Okay, Ava, who's here to forget her heavy year. What are we forgetting? She should walk away. Every sensible neuron in her brain was firing warning shots, telling her that this man was trouble in an expensive suit, that she had a presentation Monday morning, that her life was finally getting back on track, and the last thing she needed was another complication. Instead, she said, a relationship that imploded, a career that went up in flames because my ex decided to frame me for his embezzlement, 3 months of unemployment and interviews where I watched people's faces change the second they Googled my name. A reputation I'll probably never get back. She paused. Your turn. Luca's expression shifted, something sharp and assessing crossing his features before smoothing back into that easy charm. Fair exchange? He flagged down a server, ordered 2 drinks without asking what she wanted. I'm forgetting that tomorrow I have to make a decision that'll destroy someone's life. That no matter which choice I make, someone I care about gets hurt. That being in control means accepting you can't actually control anything that matters. The server returned with 2 glasses of something amber. Luca handed her one. You're either very honest or very drunk, Ava said, or I recognize a kindred spirit. He lifted his glass. To forgetting. To forgetting. The liquor burned clean, nothing like the watered-down vodka he'd complained about. She felt it settle in her chest, warm and dangerous. So what does one do? Luca said. when forgetting isn't working. Ava set down her glass. The music had shifted, something slower, hypnotic. Bodies on the dance floor moved like a single organism, all rhythm and heat and abandon. She made a decision. Dance with me. Luca's eyebrows rose. Is that a request or an order? Does it matter? Not even a little. He took her hand and led her through the crowd. People parted for him naturally, the same way they had when he'd first appeared. Ava filed that detail away. This man was used to being obeyed, used to space organizing itself around him. On the dance floor, the world contracted to just this. His hand on her waist, her palm against his chest, the bass vibrating through the soles of her heels. He moved with surprising grace for someone his size, leading without forcing, suggesting rather than demanding. "You're good at this," she said, close to his ear so he could hear over the music. "I'm good at a lot of things." His breath ghosted against her temple. "You?" "I'm good at surviving." "That's not the same as living." "No." She pulled back enough to meet his eyes. "It's harder." Something in his expression cracked, just for a second, just enough for her to see past the charm to something rawer underneath. Pain, maybe. Recognition. The understanding that came from fighting similar battles in different wars. The song bled into another. They kept dancing. "Can I ask you something?" Luca's voice was lower now, intimate. "What happened? With your ex?" "Why?" "Because you're here alone, drinking too much, dancing with strangers. Because you said framed, like you know the difference between guilt and accusation. Because..." He spun her, brought her back closer than before. "Because I want to know." Ava knew she shouldn't tell him. This was a stranger, a man whose last name she didn't know, who would disappear into her past the moment this night ended. But maybe that was exactly why it felt safe. His name was Marcus. We worked together. Same firm, different departments. Started dating, fell in love, moved in together. Classic story. She let the music carry her through the next part. He was embezzling from a client, small amounts at first, then bigger. And when the audit started circling, he planted evidence in my files. Made it look like I was the one with the gambling debts, the offshore accounts. By the time I realized what was happening, I was already fired and halfway to indicted. Luca's hand tightened on her waist. "Did they charge you?" "No, not enough evidence once my lawyer tore it apart. But that didn't matter. The story got out. My name got attached to it. No charges filed, but no exoneration either. Just this permanent cloud of, maybe she did it following me around." "And Marcus?" "Cut a deal. Testified against the client in exchange for a reduced sentence. Served 18 months, got out last fall." Her laugh was bitter. "He sends me emails sometimes, apologizing, like sorry means anything." They'd stopped moving, Ava realized. Were just standing still while the crowd flowed around them. "I know something about betrayal," Luca said quietly. "About people you trust using that trust as a weapon." "Yeah?" "My father built an empire, then left it to me along with a pile of enemies and a board of directors who think I'm too young to handle it. Every decision I make gets questioned. Every mistake gets magnified. And the person who should have my back, my oldest friend, practically my brother, is the one leaking information to our competitors." "How do you know?" "Because I set a trap. Fed him false information, watched it show up in a rival's proposal 3 days later." Luca's jaw tightened. "And tomorrow I have to decide whether to confront him or fire him quietly. Whether our friendship means anything, or if it died the moment he chose money over loyalty." Ava touched his face, a gesture that surprised her even as she made it. "Tomorrow doesn't exist yet." His hand came up to cover hers. "No, it doesn't." The moment stretched, taut and electric. Around them, the club kept spinning, but they'd fallen into some pocket of stillness where the only thing that existed was this. His hand on hers, her pulse jumping, the way he was looking at her like she was the only person in a room full of hundreds. "Come with me," he said. It wasn't really a question. Ava let him lead her off the dance floor, through a door marked private, up a floating staircase to a mezzanine that overlooked the chaos below. It was quieter here, the music muffled, the air cooler. Floor-to-ceiling windows showed the city sprawled out like a circuit board, all light and geometry. "You have access to the VIP section," Ava said. "I know the owner. Luca moved to the window. He owes me a favor. What kind of favor gets you a private mezzanine? The kind where I helped him restructure his debt and avoid bankruptcy. He glanced back at her. I'm in acquisitions, corporate rescue, hostile takeovers, that sort of thing. So you're a vulture. I prefer opportunist. His smile was sharp. But yes, essentially. Ava joined him at the window, their reflections ghosting over the city view. And do you enjoy it? Picking apart dying companies? Most of them are already dead. I just make it official. He paused. But sometimes you find one that's worth saving, that has good bones, good people, just bad leadership or bad luck. Those are the ones that make it worthwhile. Redemption through capitalism. Is that judgment I hear? Observation. She met his eyes in the glass. I spent 3 months watching companies look at my resume and see a liability. It's hard to feel charitable toward the system. And yet you're about to re-enter it. She blinked. How did you? You said you have a presentation Monday. New job, I'm guessing, given the timeline. And you're here, drinking too much, dancing with strangers, trying to convince yourself you can do this. He turned to face her fully. Am I close? Too close. He was reading her like she was written in large print. Maybe I'm just celebrating, Ava said. You're terrified. She stopped, because denying it would be a lie and he'd see right through it anyway. Yes, I'm terrified. I'm terrified I'll walk in there and everyone will have Googled me, that they'll look at me and see fraud even though I was never charged, that I'll work twice as hard as everyone else and it still won't be enough because I'm starting from a deficit I didn't create. So why take the job? Because the alternative is giving up, and I'm not built for that. Luca studied her for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, he laughed, a real laugh, surprised and genuine. What? Ava demanded. You're... He shook his head. I meet a lot of people who've been knocked down. Most of them stay down, or spend all their energy trying to convince everyone they were never on the ground in the first place. But you? You're not pretending it didn't happen. You're just refusing to let it be the end of the story. Is that admiration I hear? Maybe. He stepped closer. Or maybe I'm just drunk on whatever this is. This? This conversation. This night. You. The air between them changed, charged, dangerous. Ava could feel her heart hammering against her ribs, could feel the pull of him like gravity, like standing too close to the edge of something high and steep. We don't know each other, she said, but it came out breathless. No, we don't. This is a terrible idea. Probably. We're both running from something. Definitely. His hand came up to cup her face, thumb brushing her cheekbone. Does that matter? It should. It absolutely should. But when she looked at him, really looked, past the expensive suit and dangerous smile to the person underneath who understood what it meant to be betrayed, to carry weight no one else could see, she found she didn't care. No, she whispered, it doesn't. He kissed her. It wasn't soft or tentative. It was fierce, claiming, the kind of kiss that erased everything else. Ava kissed him back with equal intensity, hands fisting in his jacket, pulling him closer. He tasted like expensive whiskey and bad decisions, and she wanted more of both. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Luca rested his forehead against hers. I should probably know your last name, he murmured. Why? In case I need to find you again. Something in her chest clenched. That's not how this works. No? No. She made herself step back, even though it felt like tearing away from a magnet. This is one night, one break from reality. Tomorrow we both go back to our lives and this becomes a story we don't tell anyone. Ava, I mean it, Luca. No last names, no numbers, no social media stalking. We had tonight, and it was... Her voice cracked. It was exactly what I needed. But it can't be more than that. He looked like he wanted to argue. She watched the debate play across his features, the desire to push back versus the understanding of why she was right. Finally, he nodded. Okay, one night. One night. But I'm keeping the rest of it. He pulled her back in, kissed her again, slower this time, deeper, like he was trying to memorize her. I'm keeping this. They stayed on the mezzanine until the club started to empty, talking about everything and nothing. He told her about growing up in his father's shadow, about the pressure of a legacy he never asked for. She told him about her mother, dead 5 years now, who'd raised her alone and taught her that strength wasn't the absence of fear, it was doing it scared. At some point, they ended up on one of the leather couches, Ava tucked against his side, his arm around her shoulders. It felt easy, natural, like they'd done this 1,000 times before instead of just tonight. "What time is it?" she asked eventually. Luca checked his phone. 3:30. "I should go." "Should you?" "I have that presentation Monday. I need to be sharp." "It's Saturday night. You have all day tomorrow to prepare." "Sunday," Ava corrected. "It's Sunday morning now." "Semantics." She sat up, immediately missing his warmth. "Luca, I know. One night." He stood, offered his hand. "Let me at least get you a car." "I can manage." "I know you can. Let me do it anyway." They rode down in the elevator, stepped out into the cool pre-dawn air. The city was quiet, that strange suspended moment between night and morning when it felt like they were the only people awake. The car, a sleek black sedan, pulled up almost immediately. "Thank you," Ava said. "For tonight. For listening. For being a stranger you'll never see again?" She smiled despite herself. "Yeah. That." Luca opened the car door for her. "Good luck Monday. With the presentation. Good luck tomorrow. With your friend." He flinched at that. "Right. Tomorrow." Ava slid into the car, but before the driver could close the door, Luca leaned down. "Can I ask you one more thing?" he said. "Depends on the question. If circumstances were different, if we'd met some other way, some other time, would you want this to be more than one night?" Her throat tightened. "Yes, but circumstances aren't different." "No, they're not." He straightened. "Be brilliant Monday. Ava Carter, who won't tell me her last name." The door closed. The car pulled away. She watched him through the rear window until he disappeared into the city, just another shadow in the pre-dawn light. Sunday passed in a blur of rehearsal and anxiety. Ava practiced her presentation until she could recite it in her sleep, reviewed the company materials until her eyes burned, picked out an outfit that said competent professional without screaming, trying too hard. She didn't think about Luca. She thought about him constantly. By the time she collapsed into bed Sunday night, she'd almost convinced herself that Monday would be fine. Good, even. She was prepared. She was qualified. She'd survived worse than a first day at a new job. She could do this. Monday morning arrived with aggressive sunshine and a text from her best friend Riley. "Knock them dead. You've got this." Ava sent back a string of nervous emojis, then forced herself to get ready. The outfit still looked right. Her hair cooperated. The makeup concealed the worst of her anxiety. She arrived at Vance Industries 15 minutes early, a glass and steel monument to corporate ambition that made her feel simultaneously insignificant and determined. The lobby was all marble and modern art, the kind of space designed to remind you that you were in the presence of serious money. "Ava Carter?" The receptionist was polished, professional. "Welcome. I'll let them know you're here." Them turned out to be a woman in her 40s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor who introduced herself as Patricia, the head of HR. "Ready for the grand tour?" Patricia asked. Absolutely. The tour was comprehensive. Floors of open-plan offices punctuated by glass-walled conference rooms, a cafeteria that looked like something from a tech startup, a gym in the basement that was nicer than any she'd ever joined. Everyone they passed seemed busy, focused, successful. Ava could do this. She would do this. "And this," Patricia said as they approached a set of double doors, "is the executive floor. You'll have some interface with senior leadership in your role, so I wanted you to see where you'd be presenting proposals." She pushed open the doors. The space beyond was quieter, more refined. Actual offices instead of open plan, with real walls and doors and the kind of furniture that suggested permanence. "We're actually just in time for the weekly senior leadership meeting," Patricia said. "Perfect opportunity for you to meet everyone at once. The CEO likes to welcome new hires personally." Ava's stomach flipped. Meeting the CEO on her first day felt like a test she hadn't studied for. "Great," she managed. They walked down a corridor lined with photographs, company milestones, awards, a timeline of growth that started with a much older man she assumed was the founder. At the end of the hall was a massive conference room, all windows and gleaming table, where about a dozen people were already seated. "After you," Patricia said, gesturing her in. Ava stepped through the doorway and stopped breathing. Because at the head of the table, looking every bit as polished and powerful as he had in the club, but now in a context that made her entire world tilt sideways, was Luca. Luca, who was apparently not just in acquisitions, but running acquisitions. Luca, who was staring at her with an expression that matched her own shock. Luca, who, she realized with a sick, plummeting certainty as her eyes found the nameplate in front of him, was Luca Vance, the CEO, her new boss. The man she'd kissed 48 hours ago was the man who now controlled every aspect of her professional life. Their eyes locked across the conference room. She watched him process what she was, watched the recognition bloom into something complicated and dangerous. Patricia was saying something, introducing her probably, explaining her role, but Ava couldn't hear it over the rushing in her ears. This wasn't happening. This couldn't be happening. But Luca's face, carefully neutral now, professional, giving nothing away, told her it absolutely was. "Ms. Carter," he said, his voice perfectly modulated, perfectly polite. "Welcome to Vance Industries. We're pleased to have you join the team." He extended his hand across the table. She looked at it, the same hand that had held hers on the dance floor, that had cupped her face when he kissed her, that she'd memorized in the space of a few hours, and understood that everything had just changed, that one night wasn't going to be enough, that forgetting was impossible, that she was in so much more trouble than she'd ever imagined. Ava reached out and shook his hand, felt that same electric jolt, and thought, "This is going to destroy me." His fingers tightened briefly, a private acknowledgement, a shared secret, before he released her. "Please," he said, gesturing to an empty chair. "Have a seat. We were just discussing this quarter's acquisitions." She sat. The meeting began, and somewhere between the spreadsheets and strategy discussions, while she tried to focus and failed, while she felt his gaze on her even when she wasn't looking, Ava realized that Saturday night hadn't been an ending at all. It had been the beginning of something far more complicated, far more dangerous, and far more inevitable than she could have possibly prepared for. The meeting lasted 90 minutes that felt like 90 years. Ava sat 3 seats down from Luca, close enough to see the tension in his jaw, far enough that casual observers wouldn't notice the way his gaze kept sliding toward her when he thought no one was looking. She took notes she'd never be able to read later, her handwriting deteriorating into illegible scrawls as her mind raced through every possible disaster scenario. He was her boss, her CEO, the man who could fire her with a single signature, who controlled every aspect of her professional resurrection, who held all the power while she had none. And she'd kissed him, told him things she'd never told anyone, let him see her raw and unguarded in a way that now felt like handing him ammunition. "Ms. Carter," she snapped back to reality. Everyone was looking at her. Patricia wore an encouraging expression. Luca's face was unreadable. "I'm sorry," Ava said, hating how her voice wavered. "Could you repeat the question?" "Mr. Vance was asking about your previous experience with acquisition integration," Patricia said gently. "Given your background at Hendricks and Associates." Of course he was. Of course he'd lead with the company that had fired her, the scandal that had defined her last year. She couldn't tell if it was a test or a warning. Ava met his eyes. "My experience at Hendricks taught me several valuable lessons. How to identify structural weaknesses in corporate frameworks. How quickly trust can be weaponized. How important it is to verify information rather than accepting it at face value." She paused. "And how resilient you have to be when everything falls apart." Something flickered in Luca's expression. Approval, maybe, or recognition of the double meaning threaded through her words. "Resilience is crucial in this industry," he said. "We're in the business of rebuilding, which means we're constantly surrounded by wreckage. The question is whether you can stand in the middle of it and still see the structure underneath." "I can. We'll see." He shifted his attention to the broader room. "Thank you all for your time. Patricia, please make sure Ms. Carter gets settled. Everyone else will reconvene Friday to review the Cortland acquisition." The meeting dissolved. People gathered laptops and folders, conversations sprouting about lunch plans and deadlines. Ava started to stand, but Luca's voice cut through the noise. "Ms. Carter, a moment, please." Her stomach dropped. Patricia gave her an encouraging nod before filing out with the others, and then it was just the two of them in a conference room that suddenly felt too small. Luca waited until the door clicked shut. "We need to talk about Saturday night," he said. "There's nothing to talk about." Ava forced herself to meet his gaze. "It was a mistake. We both had too much to drink, we didn't know who the other was, and it won't happen again." "That's your official position?" "That's reality." He moved closer, not threatening, just deliberate. "And what if I don't agree?" "Then you'd be risking a harassment lawsuit, and I'd be out of a job I can't afford to lose." She kept her voice level. "We both know how this works. You have all the power here. I have none. Anything between us would be inappropriate at best, coercive at worst. So we're going to pretend Saturday didn't happen and maintain a professional relationship. That's the only option." Luca was quiet for a long moment. "You think I'd use my position to pressure you?" "I think you're human. I think we had chemistry, and chemistry doesn't care about organizational charts. I think it would be easy to convince ourselves there's some exception to the rules that apply to everyone else." Ava grabbed her folder, held it against her chest like armor. "But I didn't claw my way back from professional death to throw it away on something that can't work." "What if it could?" "It can't." She moved toward the door. "I need this job, Mr. Vance. I need to prove I'm more than the scandal that destroyed my career. I need people to look at me and see competence, not controversy, and getting involved with my boss would undo all of that in seconds." She reached for the handle. "Ava." Her name and his voice stopped her. Not Ms. Carter. Ava, the way he'd said it Saturday night when there was nothing between them but truth and temporary connection. "What happened Saturday wasn't a mistake," Luca said quietly. "It was real, and pretending it wasn't won't make it disappear. Then we'll have to try harder." She left before he could respond, before she could see whatever expression followed her words, before the part of her that had felt alive Saturday night could override the part that knew survival meant staying smart. Patricia was waiting in the hallway, blissfully unaware of the emotional carnage happening behind closed doors. "Ready to see your office?" she asked brightly. "Absolutely." The rest of the day passed in a haze of paperwork and introductions. Her office was small but functional, window overlooking the city, desk that didn't wobble, everything she needed to rebuild her professional life. Her team was 3 people: Marcus, an analyst fresh out of grad school, Jennifer, a senior associate who'd been with the company 6 years, and David, who seemed perpetually exhausted but cracked jokes that actually landed. "Fair warning," Jennifer said as they grabbed coffee in the break room. "Vance is demanding. He expects perfection and gets irritated when he doesn't get it. But he's fair. You do good work, he notices. You screw up. He gives you a chance to fix it before bringing down the hammer." "Good to know." Ava added sugar to her coffee, watched it dissolve. "What's he like? As a person, I mean." "Intense, brilliant, kind of impossible to read." Jennifer leaned against the counter. "He took over 3 years ago when his father died. Everyone expected him to fail. He was 28, no CEO experience, inheriting a company in the middle of a hostile takeover attempt. But he came in, cleaned house, restructured everything, and turned us into the most aggressive acquisition firm in the industry." "Aggressive how?" "We don't just acquire struggling companies, we hunt them, find the ones everyone else has written off, buy them for nothing, gut what doesn't work, rebuild what does. It's ruthless, but effective. Last year we had a 92% success rate on integrations." Marcus wandered in, grabbed an energy drink from the fridge. "You survived your first leadership meeting. Congratulations." "Was I supposed to die?" "Some people do. Vance has this way of looking at you like he can see every lie you've ever told." He cracked open the drink. "It's unsettling." Ava thought about Saturday night, about the way Luca had read her so easily, seen past her defenses to the scared, determined person underneath. Unsettling didn't begin to cover it. Her phone buzzed. An email notification. From Luca Vance. Subject, Cortland Acquisition. Ms. Carter. I need a preliminary assessment of the Cortland acquisition on my desk by end of day Wednesday. Personnel files, financial records, and integration recommendations. Patricia will send you the access credentials. LV, she stared at the message. End of day Wednesday meant she had 2.5 days to analyze an entire company and develop a strategy. It was an impossible timeline designed to test whether she'd crack under pressure. What's wrong? Jennifer asked. Vance just assigned me the Cortland assessment. Wants it Wednesday. Jennifer winced. Yeah, he does that. Throws you in the deep end to see if you can swim. Can I? That's the question, isn't it? Ava worked until 9 that night, then went home and worked until 2 in the morning. The Cortland files were dense. A mid-sized manufacturing company that had hemorrhaged money for 3 years straight, with a workforce of 200 people who had no idea their jobs were about to be evaluated by someone who'd been on the job for less than 24 hours. She approached it methodically. Financial health first, personnel second, market viability third. The numbers painted a bleak picture: outdated equipment, inefficient processes, a leadership team that had made consistently bad decisions. But underneath the dysfunction, she found something worth saving: a workforce with institutional knowledge, a product line that still had market demand, and real estate holdings that were undervalued on the books. It was salvageable. Difficult, expensive, requiring brutal cuts in some areas and heavy investment in others, but salvageable. She built her recommendations around that premise. Tuesday disappeared into spreadsheets and interviews with Cortland's existing management via conference call. They were defensive, desperate, trying to spin their failures into temporary setbacks. Ava listened, took notes, and identified which of them might survive the integration and which were already dead weight. By Tuesday night, she had a draft. By Wednesday morning, she had something she'd defend. She arrived at the office at 7, printed the 50-page report, and had it on Luca's desk by 8. Then she went to her office, closed the door, and allowed herself 5 minutes of pure anxiety before forcing herself back to work on other projects. The response came at 4:30. From Luca Vance, subject R.E., Cortland acquisition. My office. Now. Her heart kicked against her ribs. Jennifer looked up from her desk as Ava passed. Good luck, she mouthed. Luca's office was on the top floor, corner position, with views that made her office's window look like a porthole. Floor-to-ceiling glass on 2 sides, minimalist furniture that probably cost more than her car, and evidence of long hours, coffee cups, papers scattered across the desk, a suit jacket draped over a chair. He stood by the window, her report in hand. Close the door, he said without turning. She did. This analysis. He finally looked at her. It's good. Ava waited. There had to be more. A but, however, some caveat that would undercut the praise. You identified structural issues the previous team missed. Your personnel recommendations are surgical. You're not just cutting costs, you're excising the parts that are actively toxic while preserving institutional knowledge. And your integration timeline is aggressive but achievable. He set down the report. I'm impressed. Thank you. I'm also concerned. Why? Because you're good at this, really good, which means you're going to be valuable, which means I'm going to rely on you, which complicates the situation we're both pretending doesn't exist. There it was, the acknowledgement she'd been dreading. Mr. Vance, don't. He held up a hand. I'm not trying to start something. I'm trying to be honest. Saturday night happened. We can't undo it. And yes, you're right that there's a power imbalance that makes anything between us inappropriate. But pretending we don't have chemistry, that we don't understand each other in ways that have nothing to do with org charts, that's not sustainable. Then what do you suggest? Boundaries, clear ones. At work, we're CEO and employee. Professional, appropriate, no exceptions. Outside of work, he paused. We avoid situations where we'd be alone together. That's it? That's your solution? You have a better one? She didn't. That was the problem. Okay, Ava said. Boundaries. Professional relationship only. I can work with that. Good. He moved to his desk, pulled out a folder. Then let's talk about your next assignment. We're looking at a tech startup in San Francisco. Bleeding edge AI development, brilliant founders, catastrophic business model. I want you on the assessment team. When? You'd fly out Monday, spend the week on site, report back Friday. A week in San Francisco. A week away from this office, from the constant tension of working 3 feet away from temptation. It sounded like relief. "I'm in," she said. "You don't want to know the details first?" "I trust your judgment." The words were out before she could stop them, before she could consider how they sounded. Luca's expression shifted. "That's dangerous." "What is?" "Trusting me. You've given me no reason not to." "Yet," he handed her the folder. "Read this tonight. We'll brief the full team tomorrow morning." She took it, careful not to let their fingers touch. "Is that all?" "No." He leaned against the desk, arms crossed. "How are you doing? Really?" The question caught her off guard. "I'm fine." "Ava, I'm—" She stopped, considered lying, decided against it. "I'm adjusting. It's a lot. The job, the expectations, the fact that my boss is someone She cut herself off. "But I'm managing. If it becomes too much, it won't." "If it does," he continued, "you can talk to Patricia about a transfer. Different department, different supervisor. No questions asked, no professional consequences." She stared at him. "You'd transfer me?" "If that's what you needed. If working for me is untenable, I'm not going to force you into a situation that makes you miserable." Something in her chest cracked. He was offering her an escape hatch, a way out of the impossible tension, and the fact that he'd thought of it, that he cared enough to suggest it. "I don't want to transfer," she heard herself say. "I want to do the job I was hired for. Even if it's difficult?" "Especially then." The corner of his mouth lifted, not quite a smile, but close. "Stubborn. You have no idea." "I'm starting to." He straightened. "Go home, Ava. Read the brief. Get some sleep. You've earned it." She should leave. Should take the dismissal and walk out before this conversation became something else. But instead, she said, "Can I ask you something?" "Depends on the question." "Saturday night, the friend you mentioned, the one who betrayed you, did you confront him?" Luca's expression went carefully blank. "Monday morning, gave him a choice, resign quietly or face termination in legal action." "What did he choose?" "Resignation. He's gone." He looked past her, toward the city beyond the glass. "We'd known each other since college. He was the best man at my brother's wedding, and he sold me out for a 6-figure consulting fee." "I'm sorry." "Don't be. I knew the risks. In this business, loyalty is rare and trust is usually misplaced." He focused on her again. "That's why Saturday night mattered. For a few hours, I got to be someone who wasn't constantly calculating who might stab me in the back. And now? Now we're back in reality, where I'm your boss and you're trying to rebuild your career, and whatever we felt that night has to stay in the past." He said it firmly, like he was trying to convince himself. "Right?" "Right," Ava agreed, even though every instinct she had was screaming that he was wrong, that what happened Saturday night wasn't something you could just file away and forget. She left before either of them could say anything else that would make the leaving harder. The week blurred. Thursday brought the full team briefing on the San Francisco project, a company called Synthesis that had developed AI algorithms for predictive healthcare but couldn't figure out how to monetize them without violating privacy laws. Friday was spent preparing for the trip, coordinating with the assessment team, reviewing technical documentation she barely understood. And through it all, Luca was everywhere and nowhere. She'd catch glimpses of him in meetings, passing in hallways, always professional, always appropriate. But sometimes their eyes would meet and she'd see something underneath the corporate polish, a flicker of the man from Saturday night, the one who'd understood her in ways that had nothing to do with business. It was torture. Saturday morning, Riley showed up at her apartment with coffee and pastries. "Okay," she announced, letting herself in without knocking. "Spill. You've been dodging my calls all week." "I've been busy." "You've been avoiding me." Riley settled on the couch, fixed her with the look that had cracked Ava's defenses since freshman year of college. "What happened?" And because Riley was her best friend, her sister in all the ways that mattered, Ava told her everything. Saturday night at the club, the stranger who became something more. The kiss that felt like beginning and ending. And then Monday, walking into that conference room and discovering that her one night of escape had detonated her entire professional life. Riley listened without interrupting, her expression cycling through shock, sympathy, and finally disbelief. "Let me get this straight," she said when Ava finished. "You accidentally hooked up with your CEO." "We didn't hook up. We kissed." "You kissed your CEO before you knew he was your CEO, and now you have to work with him every day pretending it didn't happen." "Yes. And you're not going to do anything about it." "What would I do, Riley? Ask him out? Start a relationship that would violate every HR policy and probably get me fired? I barely survived one professional catastrophe. I'm not creating another one." Riley bit into a pastry, chewed thoughtfully. "What if he's worth it?" "He's not." "You don't know that." "I know that I need this job. I know that I spent 3 months unemployed because my ex destroyed my reputation. I know that second chances are rare, and I'm not wasting mine on something that can't work." "But what if it could?" "It can't." Ava grabbed her own coffee, held it like a lifeline. "He has all the power. I have none. Any relationship between us would be inherently unequal, and even if we tried to make it work, the second it fell apart, I'd be the one who paid the price. He'd still be CEO. I'd be looking for another job with an even worse story attached to my name." "So you're just going to ignore it? The chemistry, the connection, all of it?" "I'm going to focus on my career and let Saturday night become a memory." Riley looked skeptical but didn't push. "Fine. But for the record, I think you're both idiots." "Noted." They spent the rest of the morning watching terrible reality TV and not talking about Luca, which Ava appreciated more than she could express. By the time Riley left, she felt almost normal, centered enough to handle packing for San Francisco, reviewing her notes, preparing for a week of 18-hour days and technical jargon. Monday morning arrived too fast. She met the assessment team at the airport: Jennifer, 2 financial analysts she barely knew, and Luca. "Mr. Vance is joining us?" Ava asked Jennifer quietly as they waited to board. "For the first 2 days. He likes to do initial evaluations personally." Of course he did. Of course the universe would arrange for her to spend 48 hours in close quarters with the one person she was trying to avoid. The flight was smooth. Ava worked through the cabin, reviewing files, avoiding eye contact with Luca 3 rows ahead. In San Francisco, they took separate cars to the hotel, a boutique place in Soma with the kind of calculated hipness that made everything feel slightly performative. "Team dinner at 7, Jennifer announced in the lobby. "Vance wants us all on the same page before we meet with Synthesis tomorrow." Dinner was at an Italian place that took itself too seriously, all white tablecloths and waiters who explained each dish like they were describing rare art. Ava sat between Jennifer and one of the analysts, safely removed from Luca at the head of the table. But she felt his presence anyway, the way he commanded the conversation, drawing out insights from each team member, building a composite picture of what they were walking into. He was good at this, she realized, not just the business analysis, but the people management, making everyone feel heard while subtly steering toward his own conclusions. "Ms. Carter," his voice cut through her observation. "You've been quiet. Thoughts on Synthesis's monetization problem?" Every eye turned to her. She set down her wine glass. "I think they're asking the wrong question," she said. "They're trying to figure out how to sell predictive healthcare algorithms without violating privacy laws. But the real question is why they need to sell data at all. Their value isn't the information, it's the infrastructure. The AI framework that generates predictions. License that to hospitals and insurance companies, let them run it on their own data, and suddenly privacy becomes irrelevant." Luca leaned back in his chair. "Go on." "They've built a tool that's incredibly powerful, but they're stuck in a data-as-product mindset. Pivot to software as service, charge for access and processing power instead of insights. And they solve the privacy issue while creating a sustainable revenue model." She met his eyes. "They don't need to sell predictions. They need to sell the ability to make them." Silence around the table. Then Jennifer laughed. "That's brilliant," she said. "Why didn't any of us think of that?" "Because you're all thinking like financial analysts instead of like someone who's had to rebuild from scratch," Luca said, still looking at Ava. "You see the problem differently because you've lived through fundamental reinvention." It wasn't quite praise. It was something more complicated: acknowledgement, respect, and an intimacy that made her skin feel too tight. "I just think pivoting is underrated," Ava managed. "Clearly," he lifted his glass. To pivoting then, and to new perspectives. The team echoed the toast. Ava drank and tried to ignore the way Luca's gaze lingered on her before he turned to the analyst on his left. After dinner, they scattered, Jennifer to her room to call her kids, the analyst to a bar down the street. Ava headed for the elevator, desperate for silence and space. Ava, she turned. Luca stood in the lobby, hands in his pockets, looking less like a CEO and more like the man from Saturday Night. Walk with me? He asked. Every smart instinct told her to refuse, but she heard herself say, okay. They walked without destination, past converted warehouses and artisan coffee shops, into the cool San Francisco evening. For several blocks, neither of them spoke. Finally, Luca said, but that pivot strategy, that was genuinely innovative. Thank you. I mean it. You see things other people miss. It's a rare skill. Or the benefit of being underestimated. She shoved her hands in her coat pockets. When everyone expects you to fail, you get creative about proving them wrong. Is that what this is? Proving people wrong? Partly. Mostly it's about proving myself right, that I'm more than the worst thing that happened to me. They turned a corner, found themselves at the edge of a small park with a view of the bay. The water was dark, punctuated by lights from boats and the far shore. Can I tell you something? Luca asked. Should you? Probably not, but I'm going to anyway. He faced her. Saturday night wasn't just chemistry for me. It was the first time in 3 years I felt like I could breathe, like I could be something other than the role I play. Luca, I'm not saying this to pressure you. I'm saying it because you deserve to know that what we had, brief as it was, mattered. You mattered. He stepped closer. And working with you this week, watching you think, seeing how your mind works, it's making it harder to pretend Saturday didn't happen. Her heart was a drumbeat. We agreed on boundaries. I know. Professional relationship only. I know. Then why are we having this conversation? Because boundaries are easier in theory than practice. Because I keep finding reasons to assign you to my projects, to put you in rooms where I can watch you work, to create excuses for conversations that have nothing to do with business. His voice dropped. Because I'm fighting this and losing. Ava closed her eyes. I can't do this. I can't be the person who throws away her career for something that might not even last. I'm not asking you to. Then what are you asking? Nothing. Everything. I don't know. He laughed, sharp and frustrated. I've built an empire on calculated decisions and risk assessment, and you're the first thing in years I can't figure out how to categorize. She opened her eyes, found him closer than before. We can't do this here. Your team is 3 blocks away. Anyone could see. You're right. But he didn't move back. Neither did she. The space between them compressed, charged with everything they weren't saying. His hand came up, hesitated, fell back to his side. We should go back to the hotel, Ava said. Yes. Neither of them moved. Ava. Her name was rough in his voice. Tell me to walk away. I can't. Why not? Because you're not the only one fighting this. The confession hung between them, dangerous and true. Luca's jaw tightened. This is a terrible idea, he said. The worst. We'll regret it. Probably. He kissed her. It was different from Saturday night, more desperate, more certain, fueled by a week of denial and proximity, and the knowledge that this was exactly what they'd promised themselves they wouldn't do. Ava kissed him back with equal hunger, her hands fisting in his jacket, pulling him closer. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, reality crashed back in. We can't do this, Ava said. I know. I work for you. This violates every professional boundary. I know. Then why? Because for once I want something that isn't about strategy or acquisition or building the empire my father left me. I want something real. His forehead rested against hers. I want you. The words should have terrified her. Instead, they felt like relief, like someone finally saying out loud what she'd been thinking for a week. This can't work, she said. Maybe not. I could lose everything. Yes. And you're still asking? I'm still asking. Ava pulled back enough to see his face. If we do this, if we try, it stays between us. No one at work can know. The second it affects my job or your leadership, it ends. No exceptions. Agreed. And if it falls apart, I don't get punished professionally. You don't fire me. You don't sabotage my career. You don't make me pay for taking this risk. You have my word. She should ask for more. Should demand contracts, guarantees, protections against all the ways this could implode. But looking at him, at the vulnerability in his expression, the want that mirrored her own, she realized some things came down to trust. Okay, she said. Okay. Let's be reckless. Luca's smile was quick, genuine. I thought you were good at surviving, not living. Maybe it's time I learned the difference. He kissed her again, softer this time, like a promise instead of a confession. When they finally pulled apart, Ava felt like she'd jumped off something high with no idea where she'd land. Terrifying. Necessary. Right. They walked back to the hotel in silence, careful to maintain professional distance, but Ava felt the shift between them, from denial to acknowledgement, from fighting to surrender. In the lobby, they paused. Breakfast meeting at 7, Luca said, his voice carefully neutral. Sleep well, Ms. Carter. You too, Mr. Vance. She went to her room, closed the door, and allowed herself to feel everything she'd been suppressing for a week. Fear, excitement, desire, dread, all of it crashing through her in waves. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. No regrets. She saved the contact under a simple initial, L, and typed back, not yet anyway. His response came immediately. That's all I'm asking for. A chance. Ava stared at the message, thought about consequences and risks and all the ways this could destroy everything she'd worked for. Then she thought about Saturday night, about the way he'd seen her, about the possibility that maybe some things were worth the gamble. You've got it, she typed. Don't waste it. I won't. She set down the phone, looked out at San Francisco spread below her window, and wondered what the hell she'd just agreed to. Across the city, in his own room, Luca was wondering the same thing. But for the first time in 3 years, the weight on his chest felt lighter. Like maybe he'd found someone who could stand in the wreckage with him and still see the structure underneath. Tomorrow they'd face the team, the assessment, the performance of professionalism. But tonight, for these few hours, they'd allowed themselves to want something beyond strategy and survival. It was reckless. It was dangerous. It was theirs. The morning brought fog and second thoughts. Ava woke at 5:30, her phone screen glowing with messages she'd exchanged with Luca until well past midnight. Nothing incriminating, just thoughts about the synthesis assessment, strategies for the meetings ahead, the kind of professional communication that anyone could read without raising eyebrows. Except underneath every word was the subtext of what they'd agreed to in that park. The decision they'd made to stop fighting something neither of them could control. She showered, dressed in her most severe suit like armor, and arrived at the breakfast meeting 10 minutes early. The hotel restaurant was sleek and impersonal, all glass and steel that reflected her anxiety back at her. Jennifer was already there, laptop open, running through final notes. Big day, she said as Ava sat down. Synthesis's founders are defensive as hell. They know we're here to pick apart their company. Can you blame them? No. But it makes our job harder. Jennifer lowered her voice. Fair warning, Vance is in a mood. I passed him in the lobby and he barely acknowledged me. Something's off. Ava's stomach tightened. Maybe he's just focused. Maybe. Jennifer didn't sound convinced. Luca arrived exactly at 7, looking every inch the ruthless CEO. Tailored suit, expression locked down, the controlled energy that made everyone sit a little straighter. His eyes passed over Ava without pausing, without acknowledgement, completely professional. It stung more than it should have. Let's get started, he said, settling at the head of the table. The Synthesis founders are going to try to sell us on their vision instead of confronting their fundamental business problems. Our job is to cut through the presentation to the reality underneath. Jennifer, what's the financial snapshot? The meeting proceeded with brutal efficiency. Luca dissected each aspect of the assessment, challenged assumptions, demanded harder data. When he turned to Ava, his tone was clipped. Ms. Carter, you mentioned the infrastructure as product pivot last night. Walk me through the implementation. She did, keeping her voice steady, matching his professional distance. If last night had cracked something open between them, this morning was slamming it shut. By the time the meeting ended, she felt raw and confused. Good, Luca said, gathering his materials. We meet with synthesis at 10. Be prepared for pushback on every point. He left without looking at her again. Told you? Jennifer muttered. Mood. The synthesis offices occupied the top floor of a converted warehouse in the Mission, all exposed brick and standing desks and motivational posters about disrupting healthcare. The founders were exactly what Ava expected, two men in their early 30s wearing expensive hoodies, radiating the particular arrogance of people who'd raised venture capital but never turned a profit. Thanks for coming, said the taller one, Marcus Chen, according to the brief. We're excited to show you what we've built. We're here to assess viability, Luca said, not to be sold. Chen's smile faltered. Right, of course. Well, let me walk you through our technology. The presentation was impressive. AI algorithms that could predict patient outcomes with startling accuracy, case studies showing lives saved, testimonials from hospitals that had piloted the program. But underneath it all was the same problem. No sustainable way to monetize without commodifying patient data. Your tech is solid, Luca said when Chen finished. Your business model is non-existent. We're in growth phase. You're in debt. $3 million in venture funding burned through in 18 months with nothing to show but pilot programs that don't generate revenue. Luca leaned forward. You've built something valuable, but unless you can figure out how to make money without violating privacy laws, it's worthless as a business. Chen's partner, a woman named Sarah Kim, spoke up. We have potential buyers, hospitals, insurance companies, who will balk the moment they understand you're selling patient predictions instead of prediction capabilities, Ava interjected. Everyone turned to her. You're trying to sell the output instead of the engine. That's your problem. Kim frowned. What's the difference? The output, the predictions, requires access to patient data, which triggers privacy regulations. But the engine, the AI framework itself, doesn't need access to anything. License the software to hospitals, let them run it on their own servers using their own data, and suddenly you're selling a tool instead of information. Chen and Kim exchanged glances. That's actually interesting, Kim said slowly. We'd need to rebuild the delivery infrastructure and charge less per license than you would for data access, Luca added. But you'd have a sustainable, scalable model that doesn't require navigating privacy law. It's a complete pivot, Chen said. You're already facing complete failure, Luca replied. This gives you a path forward. The meeting stretched into lunch, then into the afternoon as they worked through implementation details. Ava found herself in her element, translating technical jargon into business strategy, identifying roadblocks before they materialized. Across the table, Luca was doing the same thing, and occasionally their ideas would intersect, building on each other's insights in a way that felt almost choreographed. By the time they left Synthesis's offices, they had the skeleton of a deal, conditional on Synthesis's willingness to completely restructure their approach, but viable. In the car back to the hotel, Luca finally spoke to her directly. That was good work today, he said, quiet enough that the driver couldn't hear. Thank you. This morning, the meeting, I was cold. I'm sorry. You were professional. I was an ass. He looked at her. I panicked, woke up and realized what we'd agreed to and thought about all the ways it could explode, and I overcorrected. So, this morning was you trying to prove we could maintain boundaries? This morning was me trying to convince myself last night was a mistake. He ran a hand through his hair, disturbing the careful styling. It didn't work. What do we do now? I don't know. I've never done this before. Wanted something I shouldn't have. That's not reassuring. I'm not trying to reassure you. I'm trying to be honest. The car pulled up to the hotel. Luca's phone buzzed and his expression shifted as he read the screen. Problem? Ava asked. Maybe. He typed a response, then looked at her. I need to take a call. Rain check on dinner? Of course. He squeezed her hand briefly, a gesture so quick the driver probably missed it, before disappearing into the hotel. Ava went to her room and tried to work, but concentration was impossible. Something was wrong. She could feel it in the tension that had entered Luca's shoulders, the way his jaw had tightened reading that message. At 8, her phone rang. Luca. Can you come to my room? He asked without preamble. I need to show you something. His suite was twice the size of hers, with a view that turned the city into a postcard. But Luca wasn't looking at the view. He was staring at his laptop, expression grim. "What's wrong?" Ava asked. "Someone leaked our Cortland acquisition strategy." He turned the screen toward her. It showed up on an industry blog 3 hours ago. Every detail, every recommendation, everything you put in that report. Ava felt the floor tilt. That's impossible. Those files were confidential. Clearly not confidential enough. He pulled up another window. And it gets worse. Look at this. It was an email chain, internal, between board members she recognized from her first day. The subject line read, "Vance's new hire. Liability?" Her stomach dropped as she read. "Given Carter's history at Hendricks, should we be concerned about information security? The timing of this leak is suspicious." Agreed. Vance vouched for her, but he's young, may have made an emotional rather than strategic hiring decision. Recommend we monitor closely. Any additional breaches and we'll need to revisit her employment. "They think I did it," Ava said, her voice hollow. "They're looking for someone to blame and you're the convenient target." Luca slammed the laptop shut. "It's complete bullshit. You didn't have access to leak the information. Those files were on a secure server with limited permissions." "But I wrote the report. I had all the details." "So did 6 other people, all of whom have been with the company for years. But you're the one with a scandal in your background, so you're the easy scapegoat." Ava sat down before her legs could give out. This was Marcus all over again, being blamed for someone else's crime, watching her reputation dissolve in real time, powerless to stop it. "I need to prove it wasn't me," she said. "I need to figure out who actually did it." Luca paced the room. "This isn't random. Someone with high-level access deliberately leaked that strategy, probably to sabotage the acquisition. And they're smart enough to do it in a way that throws suspicion on you. Why would anyone sabotage their own company? Money, revenge, corporate espionage." He stopped pacing, looked at her. "This isn't about you, Ava. You're collateral damage in someone else's game." "That doesn't help me. The board already thinks I'm a liability. If they believe I leaked this, they won't. I won't let them." He crouched in front of her, took her hands. "I'm going to fix this." "How?" "By finding the actual leak and exposing them before the board can make any decisions about you." She wanted to believe him. But she'd been here before, trusting someone to protect her, believing the truth would win out, only to watch it all collapse anyway. "Luca, if this goes wrong, it won't." "You can't promise that." "No, but I can promise I'll fight like hell to make sure you don't pay for someone else's betrayal. Not again." His phone rang. He answered it, listened, his expression darkening with each second. "When?" he asked. "How bad?" A pause. "I'll be on the next flight." He hung up, already moving toward his suitcase. "What happened?" Ava asked. "That was my head of security. Someone just tried to break into our main server room. They triggered the alarms, but by the time security responded, whoever it was had disappeared. This is connected to the leak. Has to be. Someone's either trying to cover their tracks or get more information to sell." He threw clothes into the suitcase without bothering to fold them. "I need to get back to New York. Tonight." "What about the synthesis assessment?" "Jennifer can handle it. You stay here, finish the evaluation, pretend everything's normal." He stopped, looked at her. "I know I'm asking a lot. To trust me, to sit here while I deal with this without you." "I trust you," Ava said, and meant it. Something in his face softened. He crossed to her, cupped her face in his hands. "When I figure out who did this, they're done. I don't care who they are or how long they've been with the company. Nobody uses you as a scapegoat and walks away intact." He kissed her, hard, possessive, a promise wrapped in desperation. Then he was gone, leaving her alone in a hotel room that suddenly felt too big and too quiet. Ava's phone buzzed, a text from Jennifer. "Vance just canceled tomorrow's meetings. You okay?" "Fine. Emergency in New York. We're finishing the assessment without him." "Fun. Drinks later?" "Rain check. Need to work." She spent the next 3 hours combing through every file she had access to, looking for any clue about who might have leaked the Cortland strategy. The problem was she didn't know enough about the company's internal politics, didn't understand the relationships and rivalries that might motivate betrayal. At midnight, Luca called. "I'm at the office," he said. Security footage from the server room shows someone in a maintenance uniform, face covered, no distinguishing features. Professional. So we're dealing with corporate espionage, not an internal leak. Maybe both. Someone inside gave them access codes, timed the attempt for when security was lightest. He sounded exhausted. I'm running audit logs, checking who accessed what files when. It's going to take hours. Can I help? Not from San Francisco, just finish the synthesis assessment. Give me something good to report to the board when this blows up. Luca, I need to go. Be careful, Ava. Whoever's behind this is ruthless, and if they think you're a threat, I'm not a threat. I'm the fall guy, remember? Not anymore. Now you're someone I'm protecting, which makes you a target. His voice dropped. Please be careful. The call ended. Ava tried to sleep, but her mind wouldn't stop spinning. Someone was sabotaging Vance Industries from the inside, using her as cover, and Luca was racing to expose them before the board decided she was expendable. It was Marcus all over again, except this time she had someone fighting for her instead of against her. She wanted to believe that would make a difference. The next 2 days were a blur of meetings with Synthesis, working through technical details and financial projections while her phone blew up with updates from New York. Luca had narrowed the suspect list to 3 senior executives who had access to the leaked files. The board was demanding answers. The industry press was speculating about internal chaos at Vance Industries. And through it all, Ava kept working, kept performing, kept pretending her entire future wasn't hanging by a thread. Thursday night, Jennifer knocked on her hotel room door. Okay, she said, pushing inside without invitation. What the hell is going on? Vance has been locked in his office for 3 days. Half the executive team is being interrogated by security, and you're acting like everything's fine while looking like you haven't slept since Monday. Ava considered lying, decided Jennifer deserved better. Someone leaked the Cortland strategy and tried to blame me. Luca's trying to find them before the board decides I'm a liability. Jennifer stared at her. Christ, that's why he left. That's why he left. And you're just sitting here working on synthesis while your career implodes? What else can I do? Panic won't help. Running won't help. All I can do is my job and hope the truth comes out. That's either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. Probably both. Ava managed a weak smile. How's the assessment going? We're done. Synthesis accepted the pivot strategy, agreed to restructure their entire business model around it. It's a huge win. Jennifer sat on the bed, which Vance would normally be celebrating, except he's too busy trying to save your ass. He's trying to save his company. Maybe, or maybe he cares about you more than you realize. Ava looked away. It's complicated. Everything worth having usually is. Jennifer stood. We fly back tomorrow. Whatever's happening in New York, you'll face it together. Except when Ava landed Friday afternoon, Luca wasn't there to meet her. Instead, Patricia was waiting at baggage claim, her expression carefully neutral. Mr. Vance asked me to bring you directly to the office, she said. There's been a development. The drive took forever, and no time at all. Patricia wouldn't answer questions, just kept saying Luca would explain everything. By the time they pulled up to Vance Industries, Ava felt like she might throw up. Patricia led her past security, past the executive floor, all the way to the top. Luca's office door was closed. Voices filtered through, raised, angry. Wait here, Patricia said, then disappeared. Ava waited, her heart hammering. Through the glass walls, she could see people moving, executives she recognized, security personnel, someone who might have been a lawyer. Something big was happening. The door opened. Luca emerged, looking like he'd been through a war. His tie was loosened, his hair disheveled, exhaustion carved into every line of his face. But when he saw her, he smiled. It's over, he said. What? Come on. He took her hand, pulled her into his office, closed the door. I found the leak. James Morrison, my CFO. He's been selling information to our competitors for 6 months, using the money to cover gambling debts. The Cortland leak was just the latest, and he tried to frame you because you were new, vulnerable, the perfect scapegoat. Ava's knees went weak. You're sure? Security caught him trying to access the servers again last night. He confessed when I threatened to bring in federal investigators. Luca's hand tightened on hers. It's over, Ava. He's done. The board knows you're innocent. You're safe. She should feel relief. Instead, she felt numb. What happens to him? She asked. Fired, prosecuted, publicly destroyed. Same thing he tried to do to you. Luca searched her face. Are you okay? I don't know. For 3 days I thought it was happening again, that someone was going to destroy my career and I couldn't stop it. But it didn't happen. You survived, and this time you have proof that you were never the problem. Because you fought for me. Because you deserved someone to fight for you. He pulled her closer. I meant what I said. Nobody uses you as a weapon and walks away. Ava looked at him. At this man who'd upended her life in the best and worst ways. Who'd promised to protect her and actually followed through, who was looking at her like she mattered more than the empire he'd built. Thank you, she whispered. Don't thank me. Just... He stopped, seeming to struggle with words. Just stay. Keep working here. Keep making me look smart by implementing your strategies. Keep being reckless with you? Yeah, that. She kissed him. Not like in San Francisco. No desperation, no fear, just gratitude and relief and the beginning of something that might actually last. When they pulled apart, Luca rested his forehead against hers. The board wants to meet with you Monday. Officially clear your name, maybe apologize for suspecting you in the first place. Joy. I'll be there. You won't face them alone. Luca, you can't keep protecting me. Eventually, people are going to notice that the CEO has a vested interest in one particular employee. Let them notice. He straightened. I don't care anymore. About appearances, about what the board thinks, about maintaining some professional fiction that ignores what we both know is true. Which is that this, us, is real, and I'm tired of pretending it isn't. Ava's phone buzzed, a text from Riley. News is reporting executive shakeup at Vance Industries. You okay? She typed back, better than okay. Tell you later. I should go, she said to Luca. Let you deal with the aftermath. Or you could stay, help me draft the press release, plan the restructuring now that I'm down a CFO. He smiled tiredly. I work better with you here. So she stayed. They ordered dinner from the Thai place down the street, spread documents across his desk, and worked through the chaos side by side. It felt natural, easy, like they'd been doing this for years instead of weeks. At some point, Luca's jacket came off. Ava kicked off her heels. The city lights came on outside, turning the windows into mirrors. Can I ask you something? Ava said around midnight. Always. That night at the club, if you'd known who I was, would you still have approached me? Luca considered this. Honestly, I don't know. Probably not. I would have seen the complications and walked away. So we got lucky. In the most unlucky way possible. Where the universe was forcing us towards something we needed but would never have chosen. He set down the document he'd been reviewing. Do you regret it? Saturday night? No, it was reckless and stupid and potentially career-ending, but she met his eyes. It was the first time in a year I felt like myself. Like I was more than the scandal, more than the comeback story. Just Ava, with someone who saw me. I did see you. I do. I know. She reached for his hand. That's why this is terrifying. What is? Trusting you, believing this might work, letting myself want something beyond professional survival. Luca pulled her closer until she was standing between his legs, his arms wrapped around her waist. I can't promise it'll be easy, he said. I can't promise we won't screw this up or that there won't be more crises. But I can promise I'll show up. I'll fight for you. The office door burst open. They jumped apart, but not fast enough. Patricia stood in the doorway, frozen, her expression cycling through shock and understanding. I'm so sorry, she stammered. The door was unlocked and I thought... It's fine, Luca said, his voice remarkably steady. What do you need? Patricia seemed to wrestle with whether to acknowledge what she'd just witnessed. Professional instincts won. The lawyers need signatures on Morrison's termination paperwork, and the board wants to schedule that meeting with Ms. Carter Monday at 9? Make it 10. And Patricia? He waited until she met his eyes. This doesn't leave this room. Of course not, Mr. Vance. She set the papers on his desk and backed out, closing the door carefully. Silence descended. Well, Ava said. So much for keeping this secret. Patricia's loyal. She won't talk. She'll speculate. And speculation becomes gossip, becomes HR investigation. Ava grabbed her shoes. We need to be more careful. Or we need to stop hiding. She stopped. What? We're adults. We're not breaking any laws. Yes, there's a power imbalance, but you're not reporting directly to me, and I'm not using my position to coerce you. He stood. Maybe the answer isn't sneaking around. Maybe it's being honest about what this is. And what is this? I don't know yet, but I want the chance to find out without lying about it. Ava thought about Marcus, about hiding their relationship until it was too late, about how secrets always became weapons eventually. If we go public, the board will have opinions, she said. The board always has opinions. I stopped caring about them when they questioned my leadership for the 50th time. People will say I slept my way into this job. People will say a lot of things. Most of them will be wrong. He crossed to her. I'm not asking you to announce it on Monday. I'm asking you to stop treating this like something shameful, to let it be what it is without apologizing for it. And if it falls apart, then it falls apart. And we deal with it like adults instead of pretending it never existed. She wanted to argue, wanted to list all the reasons this was still dangerous, still reckless, still likely to explode in their faces. Instead, she said, Okay. Let's stop hiding. Let's be honest. Let's see what happens when we're not constantly looking over our shoulders. Luca's smile was brilliant. You're sure? No, but I'm doing it anyway. He kissed her, and this time when they pulled apart, Ava felt lighter, like maybe the weight of secrecy had been heavier than she'd realized. They finished the paperwork, turned off the lights, and left the building together. No subterfuge, no pretending they were heading in different directions. Just two people who'd decided to stop fighting something that might actually be worth the risk. On the street, Luca hailed a cab. Dinner? He asked. Actual dinner at a restaurant, like normal people who are dating? Are we dating? I'd like to be, if you're interested. Ava thought about Saturday night, about the club where this started, about how far they'd come in such a short time. I'm interested, she said. They went to a bistro in the West Village, got a table by the window, and spent 3 hours talking about everything except work. Luca told her about growing up in his father's shadow, about the pressure of a legacy he never wanted. Ava told him about her mother, about learning to be strong because the alternative was collapse. Somewhere around dessert, she realized she was happy. Not just surviving, not just getting through, actually happy. It was terrifying and perfect and real. When Luca dropped her off at her apartment building, he walked her to the door. I want to see you tomorrow, he said. Not at work, just us. Okay. He kissed her goodnight, soft and lingering. Sleep well, Ava Carter. You too, Luca Vance. She watched him walk back to the cab, watched it pull away, and for the first time in longer than she could remember, she felt like maybe the universe was finally on her side. Inside her apartment, she found a text from Riley. I need details. All of them. Tomorrow. Ava smiled and typed back. Tomorrow. Promise. Another message appeared, this one from Luca. No regrets yet? Not even close, she replied. His response was immediate. Good. Let's keep it that way. Ava fell asleep thinking about possibilities instead of disasters, about futures instead of fears. She didn't know that across the city, in a warehouse she'd never heard of, someone was making a phone call that would change everything. The leak is handled, a voice said. Morrison took the fall like we planned, but Vance is getting too close. And the girl, she's becoming a problem. Then remove the problem, came the response. We're too close to let some junior analyst ruin everything. What about Vance? Let him think he won. Let him get comfortable. Then we'll remind him that in this business, there's no such thing as safe. The call ended. And somewhere in the darkness, the real threat was just beginning to take shape. The weekend felt stolen. Saturday morning, Luca picked her up in his car. Not a driver, not a company vehicle, just him behind the wheel of something sleek and black that probably cost more than most people's houses. They drove north out of the city, windows down, music playing, leaving behind the weight of corporate politics and careful pretense. Where are we going? Ava asked. Away. He glanced at her, smiled. Is that okay? Depends on how far away. Couple hours. There's a place upstate I go when I need to think. Figure you might like it. The place turned out to be a house on a lake. Modern glass and wood tucked into trees that were just starting to turn autumn colors. Remote enough that the neighbors were measured in acres instead of feet. You own this? Ava asked as they pulled up. My father bought it years ago. Said every person needed somewhere they could disappear. Luca killed the engine. I haven't been here in months. Too busy building the empire. They spent the day doing nothing important. Walked around the lake, made lunch from whatever was in the freezer, sat on the dock watching the water. It felt surreal. This quiet, this ordinary, after weeks of crisis and careful performance. Tell me something, Ava said as afternoon light turned the lake gold. When you took over the company, were you scared? Luca was quiet for a long moment. Terrified. My father died on a Tuesday. By Thursday, I was sitting in the CEO chair with a board that wanted me gone and competitors circling like sharks. I had no idea what I was doing. But you figured it out. I faked it until it became real, made decisions fast enough that people couldn't question them, fired anyone who undermined me, built alliances with people who had as much to lose as I did. He picked up a stone, sent it skipping across the water. My father left me an empire, but he also left me alone in a room full of enemies. Sometimes I'm not sure which gift was worse. Do you miss him? Every day. And I'm also angry at him for dying before teaching me how to do any of this. Ava leaned against his shoulder. For what it's worth, I think you're doing okay. Just okay? You're keeping a multi-million-dollar company alive while dating an employee with a scandalous past. I'd call that better than average. He laughed, wrapped an arm around her. When you put it that way. They watched the sun set, turning the sky into layers of orange and purple. Inside, Luca built a fire while Ava opened a bottle of wine she found in the kitchen. They ended up on the floor in front of the fireplace, talking about everything and nothing, the conversation flowing like they'd known each other years instead of weeks. Can I ask you something? Luca said eventually. About Marcus. Your ex. Ava tensed. What about him? Did you still think about what he did? Does it still hurt? She considered lying, decided he deserved honesty. Sometimes. Not the relationship. That died the moment I realized what he'd done. But the betrayal. The way he used my trust as a weapon. That still stings. Do you think you'll ever forgive him? No. Forgiveness implies he deserves it, and he doesn't. He destroyed my career to save his own skin, then had the audacity to apologize like that would fix anything. She took a sip of wine. Why are you asking? Because I need to understand. If someone betrayed you that completely, how did you learn to trust again? How are you here with me, letting yourself be vulnerable after what he did? Ava looked at him, really looked, past the CEO polish to the person underneath who was asking because he needed to know how to do the same thing. I didn't learn to trust again, she said. I learned to trust differently. I got better at reading people, at seeing warning signs, at protecting myself while still taking risks. She set down her wine. You're not asking about me. You're asking about your friend, the one who betrayed you. Morrison wasn't my friend, but before him there were others. People I trusted who sold me out for money or power, or just because they could. Luca stared into the fire. At some point, you start wondering if the problem is them or you. If maybe you're just bad at choosing who to trust. Or maybe we're just in industries where loyalty is rare and everyone's looking for an advantage. Comforting thought. Not meant to be comforting, meant to be honest. She shifted closer. You asked how I learned to trust again. The real answer is, I haven't. Not completely. But I decided that being cautious forever was worse than being hurt again. So I take the risk, and I deal with the consequences if it goes wrong. Is that what I am? A risk? The biggest one I've taken in a long time. He kissed her then, slow and deliberate, tasting like wine in firelight. When they pulled apart, his hand came up to cup her face. I don't want to hurt you, he said quietly. Then don't. What if I do anyway? What if I screw this up or my work destroys it? Or then we'll deal with it, together or separately, but we'll deal. She covered his hand with hers. I'm not asking for guarantees, Luca. I'm just asking you to try. I can do that. They stayed at the lake house through Sunday, existing in a bubble where the real world couldn't reach them. No emails, no board meetings, no crisis management, just this. Learning each other in ways that had nothing to do with business. Sunday evening, driving back to the city, Ava felt the tension creeping back in. Tomorrow she'd face the board, sit in a room full of people who'd suspected her of betrayal, and accept their apologies with grace she wasn't sure she felt. "You'll be fine," Luca said, reading her mind. "They know Morrison was the leak. Your name is cleared." Knowing and believing are different things. Then make them believe. Walk in there like you own the room. Answer their questions. Show them you're not someone who folds under pressure. Is that what you do? Every single day. Monday morning arrived with cold rain and a knot in Ava's stomach that wouldn't loosen. She dressed in her most severe suit, pulled her hair back, and practiced neutral expressions in the mirror until she could look unbothered on command. Jennifer caught her in the hallway before the board meeting. "You ready for this?" she asked. "No, but I'm doing it anyway." "That's the spirit." Jennifer lowered her voice. "For what it's worth, most of the board feels like idiots for suspecting you. Morrison's arrest made them look bad, and they know it." "Good. Just don't let them see how angry you are. They don't like women who show teeth." The boardroom was exactly as she remembered. Glass walls, massive table, 12 people who controlled the company's future arranged like a tribunal. Luca sat at the head, expression neutral. He met her eyes briefly, a flicker of encouragement before the mask slid back into place. "Ms. Carter," said Margaret Reeves, the board chair. "Thank you for joining us. Please, sit." Ava sat. Reeves cleared her throat. "We asked you here to formally apologize for the suspicion that fell on you during the Morrison investigation. We now know you had nothing to do with the information leak, and we regret any distress our inquiries may have caused." "Understood," Ava said, keeping her voice level. "We also want to commend your work on the Cortland and Synthesis acquisitions. Your analysis has been exceptional, and Mr. Vance speaks very highly of your contributions." She didn't look at Luca. "Thank you." Another board member, an older man whose name she couldn't remember, leaned forward. "Given the circumstances, we'd understand if you wanted to transfer to a different department. No shame in it, fresh start, and all that." There it was. The escape hatch, offered with corporate politeness. "I appreciate the offer," Ava said, "but I'm exactly where I want to be." Reeves smiled. "Excellent. Then we'll consider this matter closed." The meeting lasted another 20 minutes. Updates on Morrison's prosecution, discussion of his replacement, strategies for managing the press. Ava contributed when asked, stayed silent when appropriate, and walked out feeling like she'd survived an execution. Luca caught up with her at the elevator. "That went well," he said quietly. "They offered me a transfer." "I know. I'm glad you turned it down. Are you? Or are you worried I'll make things complicated?" He waited until the elevator doors closed, sealing them in privacy. "I'm worried you'll decide I'm not worth the risk and leave anyway. I'm not going anywhere. Promise?" "Can't promise that. But I'm choosing to stay right now, and that's all anyone gets." He looked like he wanted to say more, but the elevator dinged and the doors opened on the executive floor. Back to performance, back to professional distance. The week settled into routine. Work, meetings, late nights at the office where she and Luca found excuses to collaborate that were half legitimate and half just wanting to be near each other. Patricia definitely knew something was happening, but kept it to herself with admirable discretion. Thursday afternoon, Ava was deep in financial projections when her phone rang. Unknown number. "Ava Carter," she answered. "Miss Carter, this is Detective Sarah Chen with the NYPD. I'm investigating James Morrison's activities prior to his arrest. Do you have a few minutes?" Ava's stomach dropped. "Of course." "I understand you were briefly under suspicion for information leaks at Vance Industries. Can you walk me through your timeline the week those leaks occurred?" She did, carefully, aware that every word was being recorded. Chen asked pointed questions about her access to files, her relationships with other employees, whether anyone had approached her about selling information. "One more question," Chen said. "In your interactions with Mr. Morrison, did he ever mention anyone named Vincent Kozlov?" "No. Should he have?" "Mr. Morrison claims he was selling information to a middleman who then sold it to competitors. We believe that middleman is Kozlov, but we can't prove the connection. Chen paused. If anyone contacts you about Morrison or offers to buy information, call me immediately. We think there's more to this than one disgruntled CFO. The call ended. Ava sat staring at her phone, Chen's words echoing. More to this than one disgruntled CFO. She found Luca in his office, on the phone with someone who was clearly annoying him based on his expression. He saw her, held up one finger, finished the call with clipped efficiency. "What's wrong?" he asked the moment he hung up. "I just got a call from the police. They think Morrison was working with someone named Vincent Kozlov. Do you know that name?" Luca's face went carefully blank. "Where did you hear it?" The detective investigating Morrison asked if he'd mentioned it. "Who is he?" Vincent Kozlov runs a corporate intelligence firm, legal on the surface, criminal underneath. He brokers information between executives willing to sell and companies willing to buy. If Morrison was working with him, Luca stopped, jaw tight. "What? Then this is bigger than I thought. Kozlov doesn't waste time on small fish. If he targeted us, he's after something specific." "Like what?" "I don't know. But we need to find out before he makes his next move." The next move came Friday afternoon. Ava was in a conference room with her team, reviewing the final synthesis integration plan, when Jennifer's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, frowned, then looked at Ava. "You need to see this," she said quietly. The article was on a financial news site, published 20 minutes ago. The headline made Ava's vision narrow. Vance Industries CEO in relationship with subordinate. Ethical questions raised. Below it was a photo, her and Luca, taken last Saturday at the bistro in the West Village. Sitting close, his hand covering hers on the table, both of them smiling like people who'd forgotten the world existed. "Oh no," Ava whispered. The article was brutal. It questioned Luca's judgment, suggested Ava had used their relationship to advance her career, implied that her hiring had been nepotism disguised as merit. It mentioned her history at Hendrix, Morrison's arrest, the fact that she'd only been with the company a few weeks before becoming romantically involved with the CEO. Every fear she'd had about going public was laid out in print for the world to dissect. "Ava?" Jennifer's voice seemed to come from far away. "What do you want to do?" Before she could answer, her phone rang. "Luca, don't read the comments," he said without preamble. "Too late." "My office, now." She made it 3 steps out of the conference room before the stares started. People weren't subtle. They looked up from their computers, whispered to colleagues, watched her walk past with expressions ranging from curiosity to judgment. This was Marcus all over again. The scrutiny, the speculation, everyone forming opinions about her life without knowing anything real. Luca's office door was open. He stood by the window, phone pressed to his ear, tension radiating from every line of his body. "I don't care what the board thinks," he was saying. "We're not issuing a statement that throws her under the bus to protect my reputation. Because she didn't do anything wrong. No, I won't end the relationship to make this go away." He hung up, turned to face her. "That was my lawyer," he said. "He wants us to release a statement claiming the relationship started after Morrison's arrest, that there was no conflict of interest, that everything was above board." "Was it?" "You know it wasn't. Saturday night was before you started working here. But we didn't get together until after. The timeline is defensible. I'm not lying about us to make the board comfortable." He crossed to her. "This is exactly what you were afraid would happen. I should have been more careful, should have made sure we weren't seen. We agreed to stop hiding, and now you're paying for it." His hand came up to cup her face. "I'm sorry." Ava leaned into his touch for just a second, then stepped back. "Don't apologize. We knew this was a possibility. Knowing doesn't make it easier." Her phone buzzed, a text from Riley. "Call me right now." Another from her mother's old college friend, someone she hadn't spoken to in years. "Saw the news. Are you okay?" And one from a number she didn't recognize. "Guess you really did sleep your way to the top. Marcus was right about you." She shoved the phone in her pocket before Luca could see. "What do we do now?" she asked. "I tell the truth. That we met before you were hired, that we tried to maintain professional boundaries, that we failed because we're human and this is real." He moved back to his desk, pulled up something on his computer. "I'm drafting a statement for the board. Completely honest. No spin. That's career suicide. Maybe. Or maybe it's the first time I've done something for the right reasons instead of the strategic ones. Luca, I'm not throwing you to the wolves, Ava. Not to save my reputation, not to please the board, not for anything. His eyes met hers. You were right when you said people will speculate. Let them. We know the truth. She wanted to argue, wanted to tell him he was being reckless, that honesty was admirable but stupid, that they needed to play the game better. Instead, she said, Okay, what do you need from me? Back me up. When the board comes calling, and they will, tell them exactly what happened, how we met, when we got involved, all of it. They'll ask if it affected my work. Did it? No, if anything, I worked harder to prove I deserved to be here. Then say that. The summons came within the hour. Emergency board meeting, Monday morning, both of them required to attend. The email from Reeves was polite but cold, making it clear this wasn't a request. Ava spent the weekend stress cleaning her apartment and ignoring calls from numbers she didn't recognize. The article had gone viral in business circles. Everyone with an opinion about workplace relationships felt compelled to share it. Some defended them, most didn't. Riley came over Saturday night with wine and righteous anger. I hate all of these people, she announced, flopping onto Ava's couch. You meet a guy, you fall for him, and suddenly it's everyone's business? It's bullshit. He's my boss, Riley. It is kind of everyone's business. He wasn't your boss when you met him. Doesn't matter. The optics are terrible. So what? You're going to end it to make strangers on the internet happy? Ava poured herself wine. I don't know what I'm going to do. Monday might make that decision for me. He'd fire you? The board might force him to, or transfer me, or restructure my role into irrelevance. She drank, felt the wine burn. I survived Marcus because I had no choice. This time, I'm choosing to walk into the disaster. Because you love him? The question hung in the air. Ava turned it over, examined it from every angle. I don't know, she said finally. Maybe. Or maybe I just love the person I get to be when I'm with him. Someone brave instead of cautious. Someone who takes risks instead of calculating every possible failure. That's still love, dummy, just a different kind. Sunday, Luca called. How are you holding up? He asked. I've been better. You? The board wants my head. 3 members have already called suggesting I resign to preserve the company's reputation. Are you going to? No, I built this company into what it is. I'm not walking away because I fell for someone they don't approve of. Ava's chest tightened. Luca, maybe you should consider it. If staying means destroying everything you've built, then I'll build something else. With you, if you'll have me. That's insane. Probably, but I'm done making decisions based on fear. He was quiet for a moment. Tomorrow, when we walk into that boardroom, I need you to know I'm with you. Whatever they decide, whatever consequences come, we face them together. Together, Ava repeated, testing the word. If you want that. She thought about Saturday night at the club, about the stranger who'd become everything, about all the ways this had already changed her. Yeah, she said, I want that. Monday morning felt apocalyptic. Ava dressed in armor again, severe suit, hair pulled back so tight it hurt, makeup that said don't mess with me. She met Luca in the lobby, and they rode the elevator up together in silence. The boardroom was full, all 12 members plus what looked like lawyers and HR representatives. Reeves sat at the head of the table like a judge about to deliver sentence. Mr. Vance, Miss Carter, she said. Please sit. They sat. I'm sure you both know why we're here, Reeves continued. This weekend's article has created a situation that requires immediate resolution. We need to understand the nature of your relationship, the timeline, and what steps you're taking to address the clear conflict of interest. Luca spoke before Ava could. The article is accurate. Ava and I are in a relationship. We met the Saturday before she started working here, didn't know each other's identities until her first day. We tried to maintain professional boundaries. We failed. When did the relationship become romantic? One of the lawyers asked. 3 weeks after she started, in San Francisco during the synthesis assessment. And you didn't think to disclose this to HR? We should have. We didn't. That's on me, not Miss Carter. Reeves looked at Ava. Do you have anything to add? Ava met her gaze. Only that my work speaks for itself. The Cortland analysis, the synthesis pivot, everything I've contributed has been based on merit, not favoritism. Mr. Vance hasn't given me special treatment. If anything, he's held me to higher standards. Because he knew people would assume exactly what they're assuming now, another board member said, that you're sleeping your way to advancement. The words were designed to wound. Ava felt them land but refused to flinch. Let them assume, she said. I know what I've earned. The room erupted, board members talking over each other, lawyers referencing policies, HR representatives discussing protocols. Through it all, Luca stayed silent, his hand finding hers under the table. Finally, Reeves held up a hand for silence. Here's what's going to happen, she said. Ms. Carter, you'll be transferred to a different department effective immediately. No direct reporting relationship with Mr. Vance. You'll maintain your current salary and title, but your work will be supervised by someone else. And if I refuse? Ava asked. Then we'll be forced to terminate your employment. Those are your options. Ava looked at Luca. He looked back, and she could see the calculation in his eyes, weighing her career against their relationship, trying to figure out which move would hurt her less. She made the decision for him. I'll take the transfer, she said. Relief flickered across several faces. Luca's wasn't one of them. The relationship ends, Reeves added. Immediately. No contact outside of professional necessity. That's non-negotiable. No, Luca said. Everyone turned to stare. Excuse me? Reeves said. No, you can transfer Ava to eliminate the reporting conflict, but you don't get to dictate my personal life. Luca stood. I'm the CEO. I've tripled this company's value in 3 years. I've made every one of you wealthier than you were when I started. And if you think I'm going to end a relationship that matters to me because you're worried about optics, you're wrong. Mr. Vance, I'm not finished. His voice cut through the room like a blade. Ava Carter is one of the most talented analysts this company has ever hired. She's proven herself repeatedly, often while being scrutinized in ways none of you would tolerate. And if you force her to choose between her career and her personal life, you'll lose her. Maybe not today, but eventually. Because talented people don't stay where they're not valued. He looked at Ava. I'm not asking you to quit. I'm not asking you to choose. I'm asking the board to recognize that we're adults capable of maintaining professional boundaries while also having personal lives. Silence stretched. Then one of the younger board members, someone Ava barely knew, spoke up. He's right. We can't control relationships between employees who don't have direct authority over each other. Transfer Ms. Carter, document that there's no conflict, and move on. It sets a precedent, the lawyer protested. So does forcing out talented people because their personal lives make us uncomfortable, the board member countered. The debate raged for another 30 minutes. In the end, pragmatism won. Ava would transfer to the development team, report to someone named Catherine Park, and maintain strict professional boundaries with Luca during work hours. The relationship could continue, but any appearance of favoritism would result in immediate termination. It wasn't what either of them wanted, but it was survival. They left the boardroom together, walked to the elevator in silence. When the doors closed, sealing them alone, Ava finally let out the breath she'd been holding. That was horrible, Luca finished. I'm sorry. I thought honesty would be enough. It was. We're still here, aren't we? Barely. He leaned against the wall. This is my fault. I should have been more careful, should have thought about how it would look. Stop. She turned to face him. We both made choices. We both knew the risks, and we're both still choosing this, even after everything. Are we? I am. Are you? He pulled her close, kissed her hard enough to erase doubt. When they broke apart, he rested his forehead against hers. I told the board I wouldn't give you up, he said. I meant it. Even if it costs you? Even then. The elevator dinged. They stepped apart as the doors opened, back into their separate roles. Ava spent the afternoon meeting her new supervisor. Catherine Park turned out to be sharp, efficient, and refreshingly uninterested in office gossip. They discussed Ava's transfer, her ongoing projects, expectations going forward. I don't care who you're dating, Catherine said bluntly. I care if you can do the work. Can you? Yes. Then we'll get along fine. By the time Ava left the office, exhaustion had settled into her bones. She wanted to call Luca, wanted to process everything that had happened, but the new rules meant maintaining distance. No contact outside professional necessity. Her phone buzzed as she reached the street. A text from an unknown number. You survived round 1. Impressive. But this isn't over. Kozlov doesn't give up easily. Ice flooded her veins. She read it again, trying to make sense of it. Another message appeared. Watch your back, Ms. Carter, and warn your boyfriend. He's playing a game he doesn't understand. She called Luca immediately. I just got a threat, she said when he answered. Someone mentioning Kozlov. What did it say? She read him the messages, heard his sharp intake of breath. Forward them to me, then call Detective Chen, right now. Luca, what's going on? I think Morrison wasn't the real target. I think someone's been using him to get to me, and now they're escalating. Why? I don't know yet, but we're going to find out. Ava forwarded the messages, called Chen, filed a report that felt inadequate against the creeping dread in her chest. By the time she got home, it was past 8, and her hands were shaking. Another text, this one from Luca. Security detail is being assigned to you. Don't argue. I'm not taking chances with your safety. She wanted to protest, wanted to say she didn't need protection, but the messages had been clear. This was bigger than a workplace romance scandal, bigger than boardroom politics. This was dangerous. And for the first time since Saturday night at the club, Ava wondered if taking this risk had been the biggest mistake of her life. The security detail showed up at 6 the next morning, a woman named Torres who looked like she could break bones without breaking a sweat. She introduced herself with clinical efficiency, explained protocols, and made it clear she'd be Ava's shadow until the threat was neutralized. This is insane, Ava said to Luca over the phone while Torres checked the hallway outside her apartment. I don't need a bodyguard. Someone threatened you. That makes it non-negotiable. Luca, please. His voice cracked slightly. Just let me do this one thing. Let me know you're safe. She heard the fear underneath his control and stopped arguing. Okay, but you'd better be taking the same precautions. I have my own detail. We're covered. The next week felt like living in a pressure cooker. Detective Chen called twice for follow-up questions about the texts. The board watched Ava's every move, looking for evidence she was still too close to Luca. Catherine turned out to be a demanding supervisor who expected excellence and didn't tolerate excuses, which was both exhausting and exactly what Ava needed. And through it all, the threat hung over everything like smoke. Luca texted when he could. Nothing romantic, just check-ins disguised as work questions. Are you okay? Did Torres report anything unusual? The subtext was always the same. I'm worried about you, and I can't do anything about it. Thursday afternoon, Ava was in Catherine's office reviewing projections when her phone buzzed. Detective Chen. We've made progress, Chen said. Morrison finally gave up his contact. The middleman he was selling to is definitely connected to Kozlov's network. But here's where it gets interesting. Morrison says he was approached, not the other way around. Someone specifically recruited him to steal information from Vance Industries. Who? He won't say. Claims he's afraid for his life. Chen paused. But we pulled his phone records. 3 calls to a burner number registered to a corporation owned by, you're going to love this, Vincent Kozlov himself. Ava's heart rate spiked. So Kozlov was targeting the company directly. Looks that way, and based on the timeline, this started months before you were hired. Whatever Kozlov wants, you getting involved just complicated his plans. After the call ended, Ava sat staring at nothing while her mind raced. Kozlov had been targeting Vance Industries for months. Morrison had been a pawn, just like she'd been positioned to be a scapegoat. But why? What could Kozlov possibly want that required this much manipulation? She called Luca. We need to talk, in person. My place. 8 o'clock. Torres will bring you. His apartment was in Tribeca, all exposed brick and floor-to-ceiling windows with views that made her office look like a closet. She'd never been here before, had deliberately avoided it because of the intimacy it implied. But tonight, standing in his living room while he poured wine with hands that shook slightly, the space felt necessary. Chen told me about Morrison, he said, handing her a glass. Kozlov recruited him specifically. This whole thing was orchestrated. But why? What does Kozlov gain from destabilizing your company? Luka moved to the window, stared out at the city. 3 months ago, we started acquisition talks with a defense contractor called Meridian Systems. Cutting-edge technology, government contracts, massive potential, but the due diligence uncovered something, evidence that Meridian was selling tech to unauthorized buyers. We walked away, reported it to federal authorities. And Kozlov was involved? I didn't know it then. But Meridian's CFO? He resigned 2 weeks later and disappeared. And now I'm wondering if Kozlov was using Meridian to move technology illegally and our investigation threatened his operation. Ava set down her wine. So he's been trying to destroy your company as revenge? Or trying to force me into a position where I'd be desperate enough to reconsider the Meridian deal? Discredit me, destabilize the company, make me look incompetent, then swoop in with a solution that benefits him. That's elaborate. That's Kozlov. He doesn't just want to win, he wants to control the game. Luka turned to face her. And now he's threatening you because you're someone I care about, someone he can use as leverage. The words hung between them. Someone I care about. It wasn't I love you, but it carried the same weight. What do we do? Ava asked. We go on the offensive, stop reacting and start attacking. He pulled out his phone, showed her a document. I've been building a case. Every suspicious transaction, every leaked strategy, every connection between Morrison and Kozlov's network. I'm taking it to the FBI. Will they care? If Kozlov's moving defense technology illegally, they'll care. He set down the phone. But once I file this, things are going to get worse before they get better. Kozlov will know we're coming for him. He'll escalate. Then we'd better be ready. They spent the next hour strategizing, coordinating with Chen, documenting everything they knew, building an airtight case. It felt good to be doing something instead of just surviving attacks. Somewhere around 10, Luka ordered food from a Thai place that delivered late. They ate sitting on his floor, papers spread around them like a war room. Can I ask you something? Ava said, setting down her pad thai. Always. That first night, at the club. If you'd known how complicated this would get, would you still have approached me? Luka considered this, took his time answering. Honestly, I don't know. Part of me wants to say yes, that you were worth any complication. But the truth is, I've spent my whole life making calculated decisions, avoiding risk, building walls to protect myself. And you made me want to tear all of that down. Is that good or bad? It's terrifying, but maybe that's the point. Maybe the things worth having are supposed to scare you. She reached for his hand. I'm scared all the time. Of losing this job, of being wrong about you, of Kozlov, of everything falling apart. But I'm more scared of going back to who I was before. Someone who played it safe and still got burned. We're a disaster, aren't we? The best kind. He kissed her, and for a few minutes they let everything else disappear. When they pulled apart, Ava rested her forehead against his. What happens after we take down Kozlov? She asked. Assuming we survive this? I don't know. The board's still watching us. Your transfer was barely enough to satisfy them, and even without external threats, we're still… He gestured between them. This, whatever this is, does it need a label? Maybe not, but it needs a future, some version of forward that isn't just surviving the next crisis. Ava thought about that, about futures and plans, and the difference between reacting and choosing. I want normal, she said, not perfect, not some fairy tale, just normal. Dinner without checking over our shoulders, weekends without emergency board meetings, a relationship that isn't defined by constant crisis. That sounds impossible. Probably, but I'm choosing to want it anyway. Luka's smile was soft, genuine. Okay, then let's survive this and we'll figure out normal together. Friday morning, Luka filed the FBI report. By noon, agents were conducting interviews. By evening, the news had broken. Federal investigation into illegal technology transfer, corporate espionage, names that made Ava's hands shake when she saw them in print. Kozlov's name wasn't mentioned, but the threat arrived within hours. This time it came to Luka directly. An envelope delivered to his office, no return address. Inside was a single photograph, Ava leaving her apartment building, Torres visible in the background, and a note in typed block letters. Back off, or she pays. Torres intercepted Luca's call before he could reach Ava. She's secure, Torres said. Already moved her to a safe location. But boss, we've got a problem. Someone followed us this morning. Professional tale, probably checking our patterns. Where is she? Can't tell you that. Protocol. But she's protected. Ava's phone buzzed minutes later. A text from a number she didn't recognize. Don't panic. Torres has me somewhere safe. Can't say where. Trust her. She wanted to call him, wanted to hear his voice and know he was okay. But Torres had confiscated her phone, leaving her with a burner that had exactly 3 contacts: Torres, Detective Chen, and Emergency Services. The safe house was a nondescript apartment in Queens, the kind of place that disappeared into its neighborhood. Torres stayed by the door, weapon visible, expression locked. How long do I have to stay here? Ava asked. Until the threat's neutralized. Torres checked her phone. Chen says the FBI's moving fast. Could be days. Could be weeks. Days turned into a weekend that felt like a month. Ava paced the small apartment, read the news on Torres's tablet, and tried not to think about what Luca was facing alone. Sunday evening, Chen called. We've got movement, she said. FBI raided 3 locations connected to Kozlov's network. Seized servers, arrested 4 people. Kozlov himself is in the wind, but they're close. How close? Close enough that you should stay where you are until they confirm he's in custody. Monday morning, Torres's phone rang at 6. She answered, listened, her expression shifting from alert to satisfied. They got him, she said when she hung up. FBI picked up Kozlov at a private airfield trying to flee the country. He's in custody. Relief hit Ava so hard her knees went weak. It's over? The immediate threat is, but there'll be trials, testimony, months of legal process. You're safe to go home, but stay vigilant. Torres drove her back to Manhattan. Ava's apartment felt foreign after days away. Too quiet, too exposed. She checked every room twice before allowing herself to relax. Her real phone had 43 messages. Most were from Luca, growing increasingly worried as the weekend progressed. The most recent was from an hour ago. Chen says Kozlov's in custody, thank God. I need to see you. She texted back, your place or mine? Yours. 20 minutes. He showed up in 19 looking like he hadn't slept since Friday. The moment her door closed behind him, he pulled her into a hug so tight she could barely breathe. I thought, his voice cracked. When I saw that photo, I thought I'd put you in danger for nothing. That choosing this, choosing us, was going to get you killed. I'm okay. Torres is terrifying but effective. I can't do this again. He pulled back enough to look at her. I can't spend another weekend not knowing if you're safe. If we're safe. Something has to change. What do you want to change? Everything. Nothing. I don't know. He ran his hands through his hair. The board's calling an emergency meeting tomorrow. They want to discuss the FBI investigation, the media coverage, how it affects the company, and they're going to ask about us again. What are you going to tell them? The truth. That you had nothing to do with any of this. That the threats against you were because of me, not because of anything you did. That you've been a target from the beginning and you still showed up, still did your job, still... He stopped. Still stayed when you had every reason to run. Ava touched his face. I'm not running. You should. This is only going to get more complicated. Trials, testimony, press coverage. Your name's going to be attached to this mess for months. Then I'll deal with it. Same way I dealt with Marcus. Same way I've dealt with everything else. Why? The question came out desperate. Why are you willing to go through this? Because for the first time in my life, I'm choosing what I want instead of what's safe. And what I want is this, you, us, whatever disaster we're building together. She managed a smile. Also because I'm stubborn, and I refuse to let Kozlov win. He kissed her then, and it felt different than before. Not desperate or rushed, but certain. Like they'd finally stopped fighting something inevitable. The board meeting Tuesday morning was exactly as unpleasant as expected. Reeves led with accusations disguised as concerns. Had Luca's relationship with Ava compromised his judgment? Had his pursuit of Kozlov put the company at unnecessary risk? Did he plan to continue behaviors that invited federal investigations? Luca listened to all of it with barely restrained fury. When they finally let him speak, his voice was ice. Vincent Kozlov targeted this company because we refused to participate in illegal activity. He recruited Morrison, leaked our strategies, and threatened Ms. Carter because we chose ethics over profit. And you're asking if I regret that choice? We're asking if you're fit to lead, one of the board members said bluntly. Then take a vote, right now. Do I have your confidence or not? The room went silent. Reeves looked around the table, seemed to calculate political wins. We're not calling for your resignation, she said finally, but we are requiring additional oversight. All major acquisitions will require board approval before proceeding, monthly reviews of department operations. And, she looked at Ava, Ms. Carter will remain in her transferred position indefinitely. No reassignment back to your direct supervision. It wasn't a win, but it was survival. After the meeting, Luca found Ava in Catherine's office. Walk with me, he said. They took the elevator to the ground floor, stepped out into the October afternoon. Fall had fully arrived, turning the city gold and red. I'm tired, Luca said as they walked. Of fighting boards, fighting threats, fighting for the right to just exist without constant scrutiny. Welcome to my world. How do you do it? How do you keep going when everything's constantly on fire? Ava thought about the question, about the year she'd survived and the person it had made her. You find something worth protecting, she said, and you decide that getting burned is better than giving up what matters. It's not noble or smart. It's just the only way forward that doesn't feel like dying. Is that what this is? Worth protecting? I think so, or maybe I'm just too stubborn to admit when I should quit. He laughed, surprising both of them. We're definitely a disaster. The best kind, she repeated, echoing their earlier conversation. They walked for blocks without destination, just moving through the city like normal people having a normal relationship. No bodyguards today. Torres had been reassigned now that Kozlov was in custody. No crisis, no board meeting, just this. Eventually, they ended up at the waterfront, watching boats cut through the river while the afternoon light turned everything amber. I've been thinking, Luca said, about what happens next, after the trials, after the press coverage dies down, after we're not constantly in survival mode. What about it? I want to do this right. Not sneaking around, not justifying our existence to boards, not apologizing for wanting something real. Just us, figuring out what that looks like. That sounds terrifying. It does. But I'm asking anyway. He turned to face her fully. Ava Carter, who I met on the worst night of your year and the best night of mine, who survived betrayal and threats and my disaster of a company with more grace than I deserved. Will you take a chance on figuring out what normal looks like together? She wanted to joke, to deflect with sarcasm, or point out all the ways this could still implode. But looking at him, at this man who'd fought for her when he didn't have to, who'd risked his empire rather than sacrifice what they'd built, she found she didn't want to hide behind humor. Yes, she said simply. Let's be reckless one more time. His smile was sunlight. One more time might turn into a habit. I'm counting on it. They kissed there by the water, and Ava felt something shift inside her. Not the desperate urgency of their early days or the fear-laced passion of surviving threats, just contentment. The knowledge that she'd taken the biggest risk of her life and somehow, impossibly, it was working. The trials took 6 months. Ava testified twice, confirming Morrison's timeline and the threats she'd received. Kozlov was sentenced to 15 years for corporate espionage, illegal technology transfer, and conspiracy. The company Morrison had worked with got dismantled, its executives facing their own charges. Through it all, Ava kept working. Catherine turned out to be an exceptional mentor, pushing Ava toward projects that showcased her strategic thinking. By spring, she'd led 3 successful acquisitions and earned a reputation independent of Luca's influence. They kept their relationship quiet, but stopped hiding it. Dinners at restaurants where they might be seen. Weekends at the lake house. Slowly building something that felt less like surviving and more like living. Riley approved with characteristic bluntness. You're less of a disaster than usual. I'm proud of you. The board learned to tolerate their relationship, helped by the fact that Ava's transferred position was thriving and Luca's leadership had stabilized after Kozlov's arrest. Reeves even offered grudging respect when Ava's team closed a deal that earned the company substantial profit. "You've proven yourself," she told Ava during a quarterly review. "Whatever concerns we had initially, your work speaks louder." It wasn't an apology, but it was acknowledgement. Summer arrived with heat that made the city shimmer. Ava and Luca escaped to the lake house for a long weekend, falling into the easy rhythm they'd discovered there a year ago. Saturday evening, sitting on the dock watching sunset paint the sky, Luca said, "I have a question. Should I be worried?" "Maybe." He reached into his pocket, pulled out a small box. Ava's heart stopped. "Before you panic," he said, opening it to reveal a simple ring. "This isn't a proposal. Not yet. This is a promise that when I do ask, and I will ask, I want you to believe I mean it. That this isn't about crisis or adrenaline or convincing ourselves we can survive anything. This is about choosing you on a boring Tuesday when nothing's on fire and we're just two people who decided to build something together." She looked at the ring, looked at him, felt tears she wasn't expecting. "When you do ask," she said carefully, "I want to be ready. I want to know that I'm saying yes because it's right, not because we've gotten good at surviving disasters together." "So not yet?" "Not yet, but ask me again when we've had a whole year of normal, when we've learned how to be us without constant crisis, when I know for sure that this works in ordinary time, not just in emergency mode." Luca closed the box, slipped it back in his pocket. "That's fair. I can wait for certain." "You're not disappointed?" "I'm relieved, because it means you're taking this seriously, taking us seriously." He pulled her close. "I don't need you to say yes today. I just needed you to know I'm planning to ask." They sat there as darkness fell, comfortable in the silence and the certainty that they'd get there eventually. The year that followed was everything Ava had asked for. Normal. Beautifully, impossibly normal. They learned each other in quiet ways, how Luca got aggressively tidy when stressed, how Ava needed silence in the mornings before she could be human. They fought about stupid things like whose turn it was to buy groceries, and important things like how much of themselves to sacrifice for careers that demanded everything. They learned that love wasn't just surviving crisis together. It was choosing each other on boring Tuesdays, showing up when it would be easier to walk away, building something real from the wreckage of everything that had tried to destroy them. Ava got promoted, leading her own team independent of Luca's department. The whispers about favoritism faded as her results spoke for themselves. She even heard someone describe her as brilliant without adding, for someone with her history. Luca started delegating more, learning to trust his team instead of controlling everything himself. The board relaxed their oversight after 8 consecutive profitable quarters. He even started leaving the office by 7 some nights, revolutionary for someone who'd once lived there. They went back to the club where it started exactly 1 year after that first night. It looked smaller than Ava remembered, less overwhelming, just a place where strangers danced and made decisions they might regret later. "Want to dance?" Luca asked. "Why not? Worked out pretty well last time." On the dance floor, surrounded by people who had no idea who they were, Ava felt the weight of the year settle into something like peace. They'd survived everything: betrayal, threats, boardrooms, public scrutiny, and somehow they'd come out the other side still wanting this. Later, on the same mezzanine where they'd first really talked, Luca pulled out the ring box again. "It's been a year," he said. "A whole year of normal. Boring Tuesdays, grocery shopping, arguments about nothing. We've learned how to be us without crisis forcing us together. So I'm asking now, when nothing's on fire and we're just two people who've decided to keep choosing each other." He opened the box. The ring caught the light. "Ava Carter, will you marry me? Not because we survived something, but because I want to build something. Not someday, but starting right now." Ava looked at him. This man who'd gone from stranger to disaster to partner, who'd fought for her when he didn't have to, who'd learned how to be human alongside her. "Yes," she said, and meant it with every part of herself. "Let's keep being reckless together." He slid the ring onto her finger, kissed her while the club pulsed below them. And for once, Ava didn't think about consequences or risks or all the ways this could fall apart. She just thought, this is what choosing feels like. This is what it means to live instead of just survive. They married 6 months later in a ceremony that was small and perfect. Riley cried through the entire thing. The board sent expensive gifts and polite congratulations. Patricia told them she'd known from the first day and was glad they'd finally figured it out. Ava kept her job, kept her name, kept building a career that was hers. Luca kept leading his empire, kept taking risks, kept proving that sometimes the best decisions were the ones that looked reckless from the outside. They fought sometimes, about work-life balance, about whose career took priority when conflicts arose, about whether they'd ever be able to fully separate their professional and personal lives. But they also laughed. Built a life that wasn't defined by crisis or survival, but by choice. Learned that the real victory wasn't avoiding disaster, it was finding someone worth surviving disasters with. 5 years later, sitting in the lake house while their daughter napped upstairs and rain pattered against the windows, Ava thought about that first night, about the stranger who'd seen her, the kiss that felt like both warning and promise, the reckless decision to stop fighting what she wanted. Regrets? Luca asked, reading her mind like he'd learned to do. Not even close. Good. Me neither. Their daughter woke up crying and they both went to her, two people who'd learned that life wasn't about avoiding chaos. It was about finding someone you trusted in the middle of it, someone who'd stand in the wreckage with you and still see the possibility of something beautiful. Ava had spent a year running from betrayal, convinced that safety meant avoiding risk. But the truth was simpler and harder. Safety wasn't about avoiding pain. It was about trusting yourself to survive it, about choosing people worth the gamble, work worth the sacrifice, a life worth the fear of losing it. She'd kissed a stranger in a club and accidentally built a future. Not perfect, not smooth, not anything like she'd planned, but real, earned, hers. And in the end, that was more than enough. It was everything.